Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of HP Critical. I'm Jerel, and I'm joined by Marissa, and today she and I are going to be talking about some of the biggest news happening in gaming at the moment involving Sony and Microsoft. It was recently revealed that Sony won't be attending E3 2020. We're going to take a look at exactly what that means for Sony's reveal of the PlayStation 5, and we're also going to discuss Microsoft's recent announcement that all of their first-party titles for the Xbox Series X, or the new Xbox, will also run on the current generation of consoles, meaning there will be no exclusives for the Xbox Series X if it's a first-party Microsoft title. So, let's dive into Microsoft first, because I have quite a few opinions on the Microsoft situation, and then I'll ask you yours, Marissa. So first, let me just explain exactly what's been happening. Head of Xbox Game Studios, Matt Booty, spoke to MCVUK online, and they had a conversation, and a part of this interview, he said that as their content comes out over the next year, 2 years, all of their games will play up and down the family of devices, as in the Microsoft devices. He said that they want to make sure that if someone invests in Xbox between now and the Series X, that they feel that they've made a good investment, and that the company is committed towards committed to making content for them. Basically, the idea is that any first-party title that comes out of a Microsoft studio is not only going to be able to be played on an Xbox One X or the new Xbox, it's also going to be able to be played on the last generation. This, I think, personally, is a great thing. I know a lot of people have been saying that this changes the way that we'll be able to see exclusives. It changes the way that new consoles are being sold, which, I mean, of course it does, because everyone knows that you're going to grab the newest generation console for the new games that are coming out on it, because that's why we go out and buy new consoles anyway. But I think it's so interesting that Microsoft is deciding to, instead of worry about console sales, they're making the decision to work on an ecosystem that people can join. Basically, the idea going forward is that there won't be any Series X exclusives from Microsoft as first-party titles. This, of course, does not include other titles that aren't first-party from Microsoft. If a company decides that they want to make a game exclusively for Xbox Series X, they are more than welcome to do so. Microsoft is just ensuring that you have a way to play the latest Xbox games. Something that they've been pioneering for a while anyway, with Game Pass, for example, being available for PC and Xbox, and their whole Play Anywhere initiative. It seems as if Microsoft is really honing in on wanting you to be a part of their ecosystem. They don't actually care how you become a part of it or where you become a part of it. And the best part is that you can literally go get a $250 Xbox One all digital version and play Halo Infinite when it comes out next year on the Xbox Series X. So, Marissa, what are your thoughts on this entire situation?
I think that this is an excellent move by Xbox. At first, I think when you kind of hear that there's not going to be any exclusives, you kind of, think back to E3s of past and just be like, wow, so there's 2 games that are just coming to the Xbox that I could be getting on, my PlayStation instead, or now on the Nintendo Switch instead. So at first, when you just hear this whole, they're not going to have exclusive things, it probably does sound a little bit like, wait, then why would I get one? But I'm so much more interested in the concept of them just wanting to welcome people in on the ecosystem. I've always kind of hated the day that the next console is coming out, because it does kind of come into a, should this be a day one purchase for me? Because you have so many games on previous consoles. A lot of the times I end up keeping them, which, isn't necessarily a bad thing, but then you can't really do like hey, trade in to get the newer latest edition Xbox X or PlayStation 5, because then I'm abandoning a lot of games that don't carry over. I think that it's amazing that you don't really have to contemplate that, unless, of course, you do want to upgrade to the Series X. I think that it's a great incentive to get people to join the Xbox family. Maybe people who were on the fence, people who were looking to bring a console in that they don't already have, especially if it's a debate between, I can't really get a PlayStation and an Xbox, so which one would I rather get? Being able to say that, hey, with our Play Anywhere initiative, you can instantly get your hands on pretty much everything that's come to the Xbox One, the Xbox One X, the Xbox One S, just kind of continuing further down the line. I think that it's going to be super interesting to watch. I think that it's going to be incredible to kind of win people over to the Xbox family, especially because you don't have to grab the latest and greatest console. You can just kind of go back and get something, almost to kind of test the waters, with one of the previous editions of the Xbox family that's come out.
There's also that initiative to be able to pay for an Xbox One X in installments as well. So they're really just trying to find ways to get people to get into their games. Now, do you think that there's anything, because there have been, of course I'm sure there are, because there have been a lot of articles about why this is such a bad thing, how it's basically what you said before, Microsoft is really not pushing the exclusives, they're not going to be selling this hardware in the way that they should. I personally believe, and you probably feel the same way, that Microsoft doesn't actually care where you play as long as you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think anything negative could come out of this?
I think that in the long run, it could definitely affect their actual hardware sales, just because if you are kind of opening it up to, hey, if you still have your Xbox One S, your Xbox One that came out previously, you can still play anything that you want on it. I think that it's good for game sales, because then it's not just kind of like, oh, I have the new console, so I'm not buying the old games. Or, oh, I have the old console, so I'm not buying the new games. I think that you could kind of see where it would boost game sales themselves. But when you're talking about the actual hardware, I think that they could take a hit just because they are leaving it so open-ended. I couldn't speak to the actual numbers of it. I just don't have those figures available right now in front of me. But I mean, they've kind of already opened themselves up a little bit with allowing so many of their games to be played on PC. So you don't even necessarily, have to keep upgrading and upgrading and upgrading your console as long as you can still play it on PC. So I don't know how much it will truly, truly affect them in the long run. I'm just kind of predicting that we might see a kind of surprisingly low number. Not that it's going to be horrible, just that it's going to be lower than expectation, because now you have it so open-ended that you can have any in this family of consoles. You don't have to get the Series X as soon as it comes out in order to play all these titles. But I think that in the long run, it's definitely going to boost game sales, because now you have this much broader, wider audience of people who are going to be able to buy, like you said, Halo Infinite when it comes out, as opposed to, well, shit, now I have to factor in, I'm getting the Series X, plus I'm getting the game, am I getting an additional controller on top of it? Instead of factoring in those costs, you can just say, I want Halo Infinite. I'm going to go buy it. I'm going to play it on my Xbox One S and just have a good time with it. So I think game sales are going to see probably, a boost from this, while hardware sales, maybe not so much.
I think it's so interesting that you say that, because even still, I feel like a lot of these games are also going to be on Game Pass. Because didn't they say that their exclusives come first to Game Pass or something like that?
I think so. I know that there was a lot of games announced at E3 that, like, day one were also going to be available on Game Pass. So, I mean, again, it's kind of like a interesting landscape, because then are you just playing things through Game Pass? But then you're also still part of the subscription service that's allowing you to play multiple things. You don't necessarily have to buy them. I don't know if that's encouraging people to then go and get the copies themselves, or to continue to just play them through Game Pass. So I don't know. I don't know.
It's going to be very interesting to see, because, I mean, every year, of course, even with PlayStation, we have these situations in which we'll get two versions sometimes of the same game, and so that's exactly what's happening here. I think a great example is The Last of Us coming out at the end of one generation, and then at the beginning of another. and
Mm-hmm.
looking better. That's essentially exactly what's going to be happening over at Xbox. You're going to be playing Halo Infinite on your Xbox Series X in the best version of it, or you're going to be playing it, on the last generation in a really good version of it. So it's not really that different from anything we've seen before. I think people have kind of been overreacting a little bit about it, and I too think it's a great way to get people invested in Xbox, because Xbox has had the problem in the past of not having games to bring people over, and now they have so many games, and they're giving you so many ways to get to those games. And we obviously are going to have Halo Infinite. Hellblade 2 is coming. Was there anything else that they mentioned?
That's going to be coming coming when the Xbox Series X is
Yeah.
out. I'm not entirely sure.
I don't remember anything else from the Game Awards, because it wasn't even E3. My bad. This is all on the Game Awards. Like, this is all mentioned during the Game Awards, the games that were coming.
Yeah.
So speaking of the Game Awards, that's a nice segue. The Game Awards was where the Xbox Series X was revealed. How did you feel about that?
I think that it's kind of interesting. There's a lot of games that get a reveal during the Game Awards show. I think this is really the first time that we've seen a major piece of hardware, so an actual console, revealed during it. I don't know. I don't feel like, oh my god, this is changing the game up or anything like that. It does seem a little bit odd that they wouldn't wait until something like E3, but at the same time, I mean, it's kind of a perfect way to highlight a console, because no other consoles are going to get announced during this. There's not going to be any other major hardware that's really getting announced during this. Everyone's expecting games to be shown and trailers to be revealed. Even for developers to come out and talk about their upcoming games a little bit. So I think that it is kind of a show stealer in that sense where, hey, you know what? Let's actually talk about our next console coming up. There's been a lot of rumors about the PlayStation 5, but nothing that's like super, super, super solidified yet. So to kind of take center stage and show off that, hey, we have a new console. It's here. You can see it. You can see what we're going to bring to it. I think it's a good move by Xbox, just because there's not really anything else at the Game Awards show to compete with it other than games. And that's just kind of a different genre. You have to hold consoles in a different regard than you do the game.
Yeah, of course.
So I mean, you're just looking at that as opposed to this sort of, comparison of PlayStation's announcing the same day as Xbox. I think that it's a really good thing to just separate it out and make it so that all the focus is really turned towards Xbox that evening.
I thought it was a bad thing. So I think it's interesting to hear you say that it's a good thing, only because I had actually forgotten about the reveal of the Xbox Series X halfway through the show. Because it was, I know, this is so bad. It's because it was announced, it was within the first 30 minutes of the show, we got the announcement of the Xbox Series X. But then, that show was 3 hours long. So by hour 2.5, I was thinking about all the other games that were winning, what was going to win Game of the Year, all the other announcements we got, some of the cool looking ones, some of the not so great looking ones, and then we were all talking about the Game of the Year winner. We were talking about how well Devil May Cry 5 did. We were talking about, Death Stranding, what would happen. We were talking about Smash winning for this or that. We were talking about Three Houses winning for fan favorite and for best RPG strategy. And so much happened within that 3-hour time period. I 100% forgot that a console was revealed. And I was talking to some other people, and I was not the only one. It was like, oh shit, they did talk about this. And of course, the headlines were big, but there were also lots of big headlines on everything else that happened during that presentation. So I thought it was kind of weird to do. Also, the marketing and presentation for the Xbox Series X, I didn't know what it was. Nobody knew what it was. We were all watching it what is this box? And then we found out that it was an Xbox. And there was there was nothing else. It was just oh look, here's what it looks like. And then we find out, a week and a half or 2 weeks later that it's not even called the Xbox Series X. It's just called the Xbox. So the whole thing was just very confusing to me. And I guess I'm assuming, this is obviously an assumption, that the reason that it's a Series X is because they're going to have more in this series line, and maybe their entry level, less powerful one is going to be revealed at E3, or they'll maybe even have an even more powerful one revealed at E3, and this was just like their mid tier of the Series X, and so maybe this is just like to get hype started. I obviously don't know. I don't know what they're going to do at E3. I'm assuming they're going to show us another version of an Xbox coming in the series. I don't understand why they have these weird naming conventions. I will not understand a lot of things that Xbox does. So I think it's very interesting to see that, to hear it from your perspective as to why it was good, because I just thought it was kind of messy. It was just like a commercial that didn't even look like Xbox in the beginning. It was literally just like flowers and water, and I was like, what is this? And then they showed like some Xbox past games, like Forza, and I was like, oh, it's a thing. And then they were like, Series X, and I was like, I still don't know what this is. And so after the presentation, I had no idea that it was the new console. I was like, I still don't understand what this box is. Like, I don't get it. So I just thought it was very weird. But speaking of that, I want to kind of move on to Sony and what they've been doing with the PlayStation 5, because they've been, like I said earlier, they are not attending E3 2020. Mm-hmm. And we don't know what the PlayStation 5 looks like. We got the logo at CES, which, thanks, it looks exactly the same, but with a 5. We got the logo at CES. We got some specs in a Wired article, and like things are trickling out. But they're not going to be at E3, so like, what do you think? Or how do you think they're going to go about, showing us what the PlayStation 5 is? One of the things that they said, if I'm not mistaken, and I need to just look this up for sure, but one of the things that they said is that they're going to be skipping E3, but they do want to do more fan interactive type things. So I'm wondering if they're going to like do maybe, I know we were talking about it a little bit earlier, like a state of play where they reveal it and then they go around and like, they have these big buses where people get to try it, try it out for themselves. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, they might do more PSX, conventions then, if that's the case. I definitely think that we're going to get the reveal in the state of play. If they're not doing an E3 showing, that's really the only other major avenue I can think of at this time where they'd be able to show it off with, everyone paying attention to, their streams of it, whether it's YouTube or Twitch or wherever else you watch the state of play. That's really the only other thing that I can think of. I don't think that they'd probably do it at something like a Comic-Con, just because there's so much other shit going on, especially at San Diego Comic-Con. Like, there's so many other things going on. So if they're not at E3, then it's gonna be a state of play.
But see, that's how I felt about I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's how I felt about Microsoft's presentation of their Xbox Series X during the Game Awards. There's so much other stuff going on. And I think that if Sony did reveal the PlayStation 5 during a state of play, this is very focused. We know that this is all about PlayStation. And if they did, we're going to get, the games that are coming along with the console. We're going to get the specs. We're going to get the things that we've been waiting for, because they've been leaving a little breadcrumb of like clues, like trickling out from like this article and that article. And here's a logo. And but we still don't know exactly what's happening. And I think personally that that's more interesting than showing me your box at a Game Awards where I'm going to forget it. Whereas,
this is actually where I think that we do start to part a little bit more than anything, because hindsight is 2020. Now there are articles that I can go back and look up and find out more about the Xbox Series X. So yeah, if in the middle of the night that you're watching the Game Awards show, it's one of the first things that gets talked about, and then as you go on, you're just kind of forgetting it. Like, I totally understand that point of view. Because I mean, the Game Awards show does go on forever and ever and ever. And so, like I definitely can understand that for sure. But now you already have the configurations. You already have what it's going to look like. You may not have all the exact details. Some of those may be held, and like you're saying, it might be a series of consoles that are going to be revealed. I was more thinking along the line that the Series X is talking about all of the Xboxes that are going to be included in the series in terms of Xbox One, Xbox One S,
I see.
One X. So maybe that this is just the top tier of what they have currently, and that all of the Xboxes are together in a series now. That's kind of how I interpret it. But, like you said, we don't have a definitive, this is exactly what Microsoft meant by that. But that does still mean that we can now go and look those things up, and we can start to investigate a little bit more. We have more information available. We're actually looking at it. With PlayStation 5, I mean, the thing that, if someone was like, hey, what are the specs for it? I couldn't really tell you, because I've just mostly seen the memes of this is what PlayStation's marketing team must have looked like changing the logo from PS4 to PS5. It's like, I think because there isn't something a little bit more solidified yet, it's almost kind of like, okay, hey, Xbox is getting this time to shine alone. Right now there's this speculation, there's this logo out, there's these few specs that are starting to come out and everything like that, but we're not seeing it. We're not getting, articles on every single site that are showing it off and talking about it, and it's going to have this, this, and this, and these games are going to come to it. We already do have, maybe a small list, but still a list of games that are coming to the Xbox Series X. So it's kind of giving it a moment to shine for itself, where PlayStation is, kind of getting like memes made about it, and you don't really know exactly what it's going to be. And you keep seeing these like false prototypes show up and think like, oh, that's going to be a neat design. And then another one show up that looks like it's going to hold a pizza in the middle of it. And you're just like, I don't really know what to expect at this point, but I'm laughing at it more than I'm thinking about, oh my God, it's coming.
So, as a Sony fanboy, to be fair to Sony, because I do have to step in here a little bit, Microsoft does also have some memes about their refrigerator-looking Xbox.
For sure.
Which, mind you, I actually think it looks great. I love the tower design. I'm all for it. I think it's awesome. And, oh my God, I forgot the other thing I was going to say. They have memes, and the specs that were revealed were pretty much the same, and I forgot who it was, but I think it was AMD during CES. They were showing off a version of the Xbox Series X, and it was a prototype that they made up because it wasn't even the actual thing. So, it's a little bit of that on both sides, but I do agree that Xbox is very much having this time to shine. But I still think that I kind of think like Nintendo does the same thing. If Nintendo reveals a Switch in their Nintendo Direct, we know that that's exactly for Nintendo. If Sony reveals a PS5 in their State of Play, we know that all this time is devoted to their new console. If Xbox reveals their Xbox Series X during the Game Awards, they have a very small segment of a commercial, and then we have the Game Awards. So I guess that's what E3 is for. Yeah,
which, I mean, PlayStation isn't attending.
So they do have, even more time to go all in with everybody join Xbox.
Yeah.
So you're right. So next question. If you had to compare the way that these two companies are providing us with information for their new consoles. In the end, let's say, we find out about the PlayStation 5 in a State of Play, and we do know for sure that PlayStation 5 will have exclusives that are only playable on the PlayStation 5. As opposed to the ecosystem that Microsoft is creating, you will have to go out and buy a PS5 to be able to play these games. And we also have heard, and I'm pretty sure this is true, that both consoles will be backwards compatible, so that will make it easier for people to want to go out and buy an Xbox Series X or a PS5, because you don't have to, get rid of your entire library of video games to enjoy this new one. So, with that being said, you did mention, hardware sales. Does this mean that PlayStation is going to already have another edge What I'm assuming is that, of course, in the beginning, PlayStation is going to have an edge on hardware sales because they're going to have the exclusives and they're going to be backwards compatible and they're going to have their own time to shine, probably after E3, but obviously before summer because they have to do something before the end of the year. So it'll be interesting to see them, not be pressured by E3. They haven't been pressured by the Game Awards, but having their own cutout time to just show off what they have, giving people a chance to try it out before a reveal, and then going into the season, you can pick up a PlayStation 5. Well, you would have to pick up a PlayStation 5 to play something like God's Fall, whereas you don't have to pick up an Xbox to play Halo Infinite. How do you think that's gonna, end up in the end? Like, what do you think the results are gonna be towards something like that?
Well, I can see where definitely in the beginning PlayStation 5 is going to outsell the Series X just because, again, you have this, sort of buy-in, I guess, where you can get an Xbox One or an Xbox One S and kind of join the family that way, as opposed to PlayStation 5 is out, you need PlayStation 5. If you want to play these games, get the new console. I think that over time what we'll see is that sure, they're selling the new console, but their sales of PS4 are going to drop significantly. The sales of PS3 are probably going to be non-existent. I don't even know if they are super existent right now. Because it has been a long time since a lot of PS3 games have released. I know that Persona 5 did come out to it, but aside from that, I couldn't tell you if there's any new games that have gone to it. I don't think there has been. But I really do believe that, sure, PlayStation will probably outsell Xbox, especially if they're both releasing, let's just say releasing Q4 of 2020. They both have, so far pretty heavy hitters on their lineup. If you've been playing Xbox, especially since the first Xbox, you've been playing Halo. I couldn't think of very many people who have had an Xbox who haven't at least dabbled in Halo at this point.
This is the first launch title Halo, right?
I think so, off the top of my head. Because I don't think Halo Combat Evolved launched with the first Xbox. I think that did come out a little bit later. I'd have to double check that. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of Xbox fanboys who are like, what the fuck, you don't know anything. I got Combat Evolved like a couple of years after it came out, so I'm sorry. But, I'm sure that they're gonna try and release. I'm not saying that it's gonna be an absolute, 100% this is gonna happen, but The Last of Us 2 on PlayStation 5, that's why even though we don't have a date kind of locked in, even if we don't have a quarter locked in, I would imagine that they're trying to push ahead so that way PlayStation 5 launches with The Last of Us 2. And those would be two major fucking launches. You pick up your brand new Halo Day 1 with Xbox, or you pick up your brand new The Last of Us 2 with your new PlayStation. The only difference is that you can get a cheaper console, with one of the original, the Xbox One S's. But one of the newer Xbox consoles, not the newest, and still pick up Halo. Meanwhile, sure, you can probably, The Last of Us 2 is coming out to PlayStation 4 as well, but you're going to get to a point where that peters off, and there's no longer going to be these subsequent releases of, hey, this next big exclusive coming to both PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4. As you go, that's gonna wean off. And so PlayStation 4 sales are gonna significantly drop. Meanwhile, Xbox has found a way to make sure that all of our hardware is continuing to sell. Our newest console may not be selling as well as the competitor, but let's go back and look at previous console generations and you'll see that Xbox One S, Xbox One X, are still selling well because they're still either maybe at a better price point or, I'm more of a casual gamer and I don't need the latest and greatest. So they're still finding a way to where people are going to be buying even their older consoles, where I think that previously, when the new things come out, it's kind of been like this, I don't want to play with you anymore, and you drop it behind, and just even looking back, like, I have my PlayStation 3, I haven't touched it since I got my PS4. I have my Wii. The only reason I turn it on occasionally is because I have GameCube games that I'm really, really, really fond of and haven't gotten any type of port to a newer console. So, I still will play my Wii. I probably wouldn't go out and buy a new one if it busted. I'd probably go and find, a mom and pop shop somewhere that has a GameCube that I could pick up. But I think it goes in favor of longevity towards Xbox, especially with their consoles that have already been out for a little while, because this is a new reason for you to go and buy an older console. I think a lot of the time the market has been more focused on this is the new thing and you need to get the new thing in order to do the new stuff. And Xbox has found a way to be like, actually, no, you can keep buying the old stuff because we have warehouses fucking full of it. And, we're still generating a profit off of all this while still bringing you a brand new, if you want to throw down that money day one on a Series X and play the latest games with the greatest graphics, with the best processing, that they can offer, then yeah, you have that option, but you don't necessarily need to do it either. And PlayStation will do that for a little bit where it's like, The Last of Us 2, we're not going to have it not release on PlayStation 4 because so many people are, not necessarily going to go get it day one. I know for me, I've loved PlayStation. I've never gotten it day one. I never have. It's always been a game that has prompted me to go and get my next PlayStation. And so I think that they'll eventually get to a point where they're just like, okay, we're announcing, probably not, but just, as an example of something I know, I would rush out to go get a PlayStation 4. Persona 6. It's getting announced, like, only coming to PlayStation 5, you need to get the fuck out there and go get it. And then I'd be like, oh shit, I have to go out and get a PlayStation 5 now. Like, there's no other option. So I think that it will eventually get to a point that the PlayStation 4 just does become obsolete. And meanwhile, Xbox has found a way to make it so that their consoles don't really, not for a while anyway. Graphics are constantly updating and, getting better and better and better. So eventually, sure, the Xbox One S just won't cut it anymore. But at that point, then it won't be such a hardship to upgrade because then there will be new Xbox consoles coming out. And if it's still this, whatever you have to bring to the table, you can play your games on it. Like, I think that in the long run of all of this, Xbox has found a kind of genius way to make sure that you're buying all of their consoles. Meanwhile, PlayStation 5 kind of knows that after a while, we're going to have to abandon the PS4. We just have to see when that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the backwards compatibility will make that an easier transition, but I do think that Xbox does deserve some praise for this because I bought both consoles. Well, no, I bought the PlayStation 4 at launch, and I bought the Xbox One, I think, a few months after launch. And honestly, both of them sat for a while because neither of them were backwards compatible. All the games kind of sucked when they first came out. So it's really, really cool of Xbox to be able to do this first of all, it's cool of both of them to have backwards compatibility because thank God, like, we all have backlogs at this point, and it sucks to have this brand new console, this big brand new toy that you got for Christmas or whatever because it's coming out holiday and you can't even play it, or the only things you can play kind of suck because we always get that.
Well, and not even just backlogs, too. I mean, I have games from, the GameCube days, early 2000s, that I do like to go and revisit sometimes and play through again. And it's nice that you don't have to completely abandon those because, well, the next console's out. So, I guess I'm gonna do that. And I think, too, it also helps, as a plus for both of them. I've had some games on my PlayStation. I have the Kingdom Hearts collection on my PlayStation 3. Like I said, I haven't turned my PS3 only since I've gotten my PlayStation 4. So I've not played any of them. And I just, I was like, I'm not going to go and buy all of them again on the PlayStation 4. I have them on the 3. It's just that I don't play them on there. anymore. So I think backwards compatibility is going to be a major plus. I'm kind of surprised it took until now for these gaming companies to really like pick up on it, that hey, people really want to fucking play old games.
Yeah,
on
I think it's just that, especially with like so many iterations of consoles with this generation, you can't just move on. Because we've all spent, well, not we all, but a lot of people have spent, money on more than one, possibly more than one version of the same type of console, or they've waited to get, the it's all digital edition just this year, and nobody wants to have to fork up $400, $500, $600 a year later, like to not even be able to play the games that they just got.
Well, and even with some of the PS4 Pros that were getting announced with games, and it was like, but like, isn't PS5 like a year and a half away? I don't want to buy a PS4 Pro, and then in 2.5 years you tell me like it's all about PlayStation 5 now, guys. Like, yikes.
So one more thing I'm going to ask you, with Sony not attending E3, with Microsoft being off-site for E3 last year, with EA Play and Square Enix and a lot of other companies just kind of, doing their own thing for presentations, where do you think this leaves E3 2020?
E3 is kind of in this weird situation. I know that a lot of pressers are kind of upset that it's open to the public, but then meanwhile the public is really excited that it's open to them. So it's a little strange. I know that for a long time I'm used to getting really everything that comes with gaming news out of E3. That's kind of like the holy grail of gaming news in a single year. And so to see so many people kind of leave it, I hope that it's still at least somewhat a hub of announcements, even if these companies aren't necessarily attending E3, but they're still having their announcements around it, maybe a couple days before, a couple days after. I do think that it kind of makes E3 a little bit weaker, just in the sense of that, it's not going to be the big three that are at it. PlayStation wasn't there last year, and their showing the year before that was these really in-depth look, but of 5 games. So by the time that you kind of got that look, you're like, okay, well, I know 5 games that are coming to it. I don't know if that's everything. But it's kind of interesting. It's like, I don't want to see anything happen at E3 because I really love it, and I think that it's this week out of the year that all gamers come together and are all watching the different streams, the different highlights, the reveals, the trailers, the announcements. And I think that for 2020, it'll probably still be somewhat similar to that, just in the fact that a lot of announcements do happen near E3. I think, I can't remember how close the State of the Play was to E3, but you still had all these major announcements going on while E3 was going on. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen with E3. I'm hoping it's here to stay, but it just seems like more and more companies that you would expect to see there are not showing up.
Xbox is holding down the fort, man.
I know. Xbox is well, the Xbox is E3 2020.
Pretty much.
We're showcasing everything Xbox. I don't know what you thought you were coming here for.
Which I think actually has been really crazy cool, because Xbox has been the place where we now get to see some games that we wouldn't have seen before. We get to see a lot of JRPGs now over on Xbox's stage. Games that we don't see elsewhere. Like, they had Kingdom Hearts there, they had Tales of Arise there. Mm-hmm. They have a bunch of... I think they did a really good job at showing that, Xbox is for gamers, and they had a bunch of games for people to try out. So I think it's been really working in their favor, because obviously E3, people watch for the games. If they show us, new content, new games, new consoles, like E3 has already been won by Microsoft. They're the only person there, so they win automatically, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, and even last year, as we were kind of watching along, I know that there were a lot of conferences that were kind of lackluster. And I think that it does for whichever ones decide not to go, especially if you're talking about PlayStation versus Xbox, which has really been kind of a debate for ever. Is that it did really allow Xbox to shine, because it wasn't even like, okay, cool, Kingdom Hearts is coming to both, but we're going to give it to PlayStation because PlayStation has, had the series since the beginning. Now Xbox is getting to show exclusive trailers, exclusive looks at Kingdom Hearts, and PlayStation can't because they're not there. So I think we're kind of at the point where if companies do show up to E3, then it really is that all eyes are on you. This is your time to shine or your time to fall over and not impress anyone.
Ouch.
No, just if if you don't have a lot to showcase, but you're still there. It's kind of interesting because, it's not like Sony's faltered because of not being there. It's not like Sony's like, oh my god, Sony's just falling apart. They're not even at E3. Like, Sony has State of Play. They have a lot of people who watch it, and I don't think it's really impacted them in a negative light. Sure, you're not necessarily there showing off things, exclusively or for the first time, or we get Kingdom Hearts as opposed to Xbox getting Kingdom Hearts. Everyone still knows that it's going there, and everyone's watching the trailer being like, oh cool, when I get my copy on PlayStation, it's gonna look like this. So it's like, it's a really weird landscape right now. Where it's like, I couldn't even say that people that don't show up to E3 have a worse time. I think that it's definitely a good time to have a lot of people look at your content, look at what you're creating, look at what you're bringing to the table. But, especially if you're a company like PlayStation, who's been around for a long time and has been strong for a long time. It's not that it's
every single E3 before last year's.
Yeah, and I think it's always kind of like groundbreaking in terms of people being like, oh, PlayStation's not coming, what does that mean? But PlayStation's not really affected by it. And so that's the weirdest aspect of it, is that I don't feel like it negatively or positively really affects them. It's kind of, I don't know what it means for E3. I hope it doesn't mean that it's on its way out, because I do really love the camaraderie of E3. Everyone being excited for it. And, the hashtag E3 just like going around. So it's like, I really hope that it's not, a sort of sign for the end times for E3. But likewise, I don't think it's a sign for the end times for anyone who doesn't go to it.
Yeah. I think, Sony not going last year actually benefited them, because I don't think they had the product to show. And if they would have shown us the same games again for a third year in a row, I feel like people would have been very upset. So I think not going kind of benefited them more than going and showing nothing.
Yeah.
But I don't think E3 is going out the door, at least not yet, because Microsoft is going to hold that shit down. So thank you, Microsoft.
Yeah. And, I just picture Microsoft like stretching out, making themselves comfortable, like, yeah, we're on the fucking big boy couch all by ourselves.
Yes. And it is the only place that we get new announcements for video games. So hopefully you are correct, and it goes nowhere. And we only have to wait a little bit longer to see exactly what Xbox and PlayStation are planning, because those new consoles are coming out at the end of the year, and they've got to start showing us something soon. Well, not as soon as now, but they have a few months before E3, and then a waiting period after that. You got to start marketing, you got to start getting stuff together. We've seen the logo, we've seen some games for PS5, we've seen some games coming to Xbox, the new Xbox Series. So only time will tell, but. Yeah. Thank you so much for talking to me, as always, Marissa. Your beautiful voice and wealth of knowledge. I love it. I love speaking to you all the time, because you're, like, literally the best. It's true. It's true. I can't help it. And we'll see you later, everyone. Bye.